Hey guys, tonight we're boarding a story that begins on the banks of the Danube. It's 1901, and a late ferry is pulling up through fog so thick it curls like cream in a warm cup of tea. The whole city of Budapest hums quietly behind the veil. Gas lamps, boot heels, old music leaking out of windows with velvet drapes. You're bundled in a coat just slightly too large, something you borrowed or maybe dreamed into being. And tucked in your inside pocket is a postcard with no return address. Only 6 words written in green ink. Under the opera, take the stairs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're listening, let me know in the comments if you've ever dreamed about a library or a stairway or both. It happens more often than you'd think. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You disembark from the ferry like someone stepping from one dream into another. The dock is quiet, except for the slow slosh of water nudging the boat back out again. You can't see the city yet, only shadows moving inside fog. Your boots thud lightly on cobblestones that shine with damp. Somewhere a violin is practicing out of tune, and there's the faint smell of roasted chestnuts. Even though the vendor cart you pass is unmanned, its coals softly glowing as if it too is waiting. The opera house is uphill, though you don't remember how you know this. You simply turn left at a statue of an owl wearing a monocle and keep walking. Budapest of 1901 is busy elsewhere tonight here. The buildings breathe quietly and keep their windows shut. The fog seems to part for you, reluctant but obedient. When the opera house finally reveals itself, it does so all at once like a curtain flung open. Baroque columns, golden balconies and velvet drapes, peeking from tall, arched windows. You can feel the music rumbling beneath your feet before you hear it. At the grand entrance, the doorman looks through you as if you're a memory he misplaced last Tuesday. He tips his hat anyway. You nod and walk past without showing a ticket. Inside, chandeliers drip with crystal like frozen laughter. People in cloaks and high collars whisper in clusters, faces, powdered eyes, sleepy like they've been waiting 100 years for something to begin. The opera hasn't started. Or maybe it just never ends. You wander the velvet hallways, not entirely sure what you're looking for, until you see it. A stage curtain drawn slightly back, as though someone slipped behind it in a hurry. Tucked into the fabric is a folded note, thin and yellowed, barely hanging on. You pull it free and unfold it. 6 steps left from the conductor's stand. One knock, one hum, then down. No signature, just a faint outline of something that could be a treble clef or a spiral or a seashell. The orchestra is warming up. You duck behind the curtain, A few stray notes bounce off the rafters. The conductor's podium is deserted, except for a white glove resting on the railing like it's thinking about clapping. You stand where the note instructed exactly 6 steps left from the center. There's nothing unusual underfoot, just polished floorboards warm with footlights. You kneel and knock. At first, nothing. Then a soft vibration. You feel it in your teeth before your ears. A hum, low and continuous, begins to rise from the floorboards like a tuning fork that's been asleep for decades and is now stretching its limbs. Then something clicks. A panel under your knees swings open slowly with the gentleness of a secret. A staircase curls downward like a ribbon, not stone or metal, but something softer, darker, worn wood or lacquered velvet. It's hard to tell. The steps seem too many to count and too few to matter. And all along the spiral are tiny sconces already lit with flame that smells faintly of cinnamon. You descend. Each step makes a sound, but never the same one twice. Some creak, some chime. One makes a sound like applause in another room. Another sighs as if tired of being stepped on. The air is cooler here, but dry, filled with the dusty comfort of long-forgotten paper. There are no walls, only bookshelves hugging the curve of the stair like ribs around a spine. Some shelves hold tomes as thick as bricks bound in embossed leather. Others have teacups labeled with years instead of titles. A few shelves are completely empty, though a card tucked in one says, "Reserved for future ideas. ETA unknown." You run your fingers along a few spines. One buzzes like a beehive and flutters open on its own, revealing a script written entirely in musical notation and occasional doodles of soup bowls. Another book hums softly when you pass like it recognizes you. A few steps down, you find a small velvet bench carved directly into the wall. Resting on it is a pair of opera glasses with one cracked lens and a miniature book shaped like a slice of cake. You sit. The silence is never total. It has a pulse, a deep one, like an orchestra tuning beneath everything. You continue your descent, one spiral at a time. Every so often, a small bird flutters by its wings, the color of ink stains and cinnamon dust. None of them flap, just glide like they're carried on an invisible draft from the bottom of the stairwell. One bird perches on your shoulder for a moment and drops a bookmark in your lap. It's shaped like a cello and smells like time. Far below, you think you see movement, a flicker of lamplight or someone walking ahead of you, just out of reach. You speed up slightly. The stair narrows, then widens, then breathes outward again. Your feet begin to find a rhythm to the descent, a gentle 1-2 sway like waltzing with no partner. Somewhere between the 7th and 11th turn, the fog clears. Not literal fog, just the haze of not quite knowing where you are. And suddenly, You're certain of something. You are not alone down here, but that's a comfort, not a threat. Something is waiting, and it is pleased to see you coming. The spiral feels deeper now, the turns tighter. Each time you glance up, the last sconce vanishes behind a bend, and every time you glance down, the next one is already lit. Like the library is always one step ahead, expecting you. Your hand trails along the curved wooden rail, smooth and slightly warm, as though dozens of others have passed this way and left behind the heat of thought. You begin to notice music not playing exactly, but resting somewhere in the air. A melody without sound, the feeling of a lullaby you used to know. A brass hum brushes your collarbone. The scent of beeswax and warm ink sharpens slightly. And that's when you see it. A curtain impossibly out of place, hanging in the middle of a stairwell landing. It sways gently, even though there's no breeze. You part it and step through. Behind it is a hidden landing, dim with walls, upholstered in burgundy velvet that drink up the light. You've entered the backstage of something that doesn't know it's on stage. And there, pinned to the side of the curtain, like a theater cue, is another note in the same green ink. Ask politely, only once, then hum. You clear your throat, which somehow feels like knocking on a door in a dream. Quietly, you say, "May I come through?" The velvet rustles. You hum nothing fancy, just a simple note, the kind you might let slip while drying dishes or tying your shoes. Something about it feels right. The curtain lifts, revealing not another staircase, but the back of the opera house's main stage. No longer the 1901 evening you left behind, but a strange mirror of it, empty, lit by ghost lights and entirely silent. There's no orchestra pit, no audience, just the feeling that something important has recently ended, and the room is still deciding whether to miss it. And tucked just left of center stage, almost hidden behind the velvet folds, is a square in the floor, a trapdoor. You kneel beside it. There's a faint outline, no latch, but it opens to your touch like it was waiting for you specifically. Inside, there's a stairwell once more, but this one is narrower, darker, and made of old theater wood painted black and scuffed with decades of shoe marks. You descend again now, enclosed by deep burgundy walls and the faint scent of burnt matches. This stair feels theatrical creaky in the exaggerated way of stage doors and prop chests. And as you spiral down, the light shifts gradually from candle glow to something stranger, a kind of silvery dusk that doesn't seem to come from any single source. Shadows remain where they should, but they're faint, as if they're just pretending. At the next landing, you find a small brass music stand. On it rests a sheaf of paper, but the notes aren't musical. They're written in sentences with occasional scribbles in the margins that read like stage directions. If they make it this far, offer them something warm. If they look confused, smile. no teeth. Watch for questions with no punctuation. You look up and there it is. A small figure, no taller than your knee, with tiny spectacles and a waistcoat sewn from a fabric that shifts between velvet and paper. Its wings are folded, more cloak than bat, and it blinks at you slowly from behind a china teacup no larger than a plum. Chamomile it offers, and the voice is surprisingly deep, like a baritone who once sang Verdi and now prefers silence. You nod. It pours from a thimble-sized pot, the steam scented with lavender and old honey. I catalogue forgotten ideas, the bat says. The ones people almost had, but never quite reached. Half dreams, dropped thoughts, questions that got distracted halfway through. It gestures toward a tall set of pigeonholes behind it, each labeled in flowing script. How do violins feel about rain? Did anyone ever invent a lullaby for ghosts? Could memories be folded like origami? Each slot holds a few scraps of paper. One has a single comma on it. Another contains a tiny painting of a cat sleeping inside a bell. You sip your tea. It tastes like being gently reminded of your favorite smell from childhood. The bat watches you patiently, and you realize it's waiting to be asked something. So you ask, "What's further down?" The bat nods approvingly, as though that was the exact correct question. "It depends on how heavy your thoughts are," it replies. Heavier ones go deeper. Ideas with a bit of whimsy. They drift upward. You seem medium light. Maybe one more level. You thank it and rise, feeling as though your coat is slightly looser now, as if a worry you didn't know you were carrying has unbuttoned itself and wandered off. The next stairwell opens behind a panel in the wall that you didn't see until just now. The bat winks once and returns to sorting a pile of mismatched paper clips, each labeled with a year. You step through the panel and begin your descent again. Now, the spiral narrows to a point where your elbows brush velvet. The sconces are shaped like treble clefs, and they flicker when you pass, humming, just faintly, like tuning forks being woken gently. Somewhere below, a door opens. You don't hear it so much as feel it in the way the air moves. Like a curtain rising or a conductor raising a hand. You're nearly there. The staircase opens again this time into a dome-shaped room, circular as a music box, with the curve of the spiral still winding gently along the walls. The floor beneath you is not stone or wood, but something unexpectedly soft, like layers of pressed velvet and old sheet music stitched together and muffled to hush even the boldest step. It smells like orchestra dust and the distant echo of perfume. You don't need to be told this place is special. You feel it in your shoulders, which lower without effort. You feel it in your ears, which are greeted by the warm hush of silence that is not empty but full brimming with something patiently waiting its cue. The center of the room is bare except for a small conductor's podium. Not the one you saw earlier on the opera stage, a much older one. worn wood smoothed by generations of gestures. And beside it, a velvet rope lies coiled on the floor, leading to a square of darkness that might be another trapdoor or simply a shadow with ambition. As you step closer, the rope pulses once as if breathing. Then it tugs gently toward the wall, and a seam opens so smoothly you question whether it was ever there. The rope slides inside like a guide dog certain of the route. You follow. It leads you behind the curved wall into a narrower spiral, this one lined not with books but balconies, each one no wider than a windowsill, each carved into the inner wall of the spiral like swallows' nests. On every balcony, books, thousands. Their spines shimmer with different textures: silk, smoke, bone, mothwing, even glass. Some don't shimmer at all, but pulse faintly with breath. They whisper as you pass, not in words, but in feelings, moments, snippets, the exact temperature of a summer afternoon, the taste of a forgotten laugh. You pause at one balcony. The book in front of you has no title, only a diagram of a spiral staircase etched into its cover. Curious, you open it. Inside, not words, but sound. A page turns, and you hear a cello gliding down a staircase made of minor thirds. Another turn, a soprano humming the word, maybe through an arched corridor. You turn again. Now the soft clinking of teacups and distant thunder harmonize in a waltz. The book sings in layers, folding music and memory together into something you're not entirely sure you've heard or remembered. When you close it, the book lets out a gentle sigh. Another balcony holds a book made entirely of theater programs. Its cover is a patchwork of ticket stubs. Inside each page leads to a performance you've never seen, the Screaming Violets Act 2. Only. The curtain that forgot it was closed. Piano for one thumb. Every title is both absurd and entirely believable. You reach for one labeled The Room of Rehearsed Echoes. Immediately, a door appears beside the balcony. You hesitate, but only for a moment. After all, you're here to explore. You step through. You're met with a long oval chamber. Its walls curve like a cello body, and its ceiling glows with an amber tone like late evening light caught inside a bottle. There are no visible instruments, but you feel the presence of music, like someone holding a breath just out of reach. Then you hear them, faint voices, not ghostly, not eerie, just busy. Warm baritones reciting lines. Sopranos adjusting pitch mid-sentence. A child's whisper repeating the same phrase as if trying to learn it. If I had a candle, I'd teach it to sing. The room is rehearsing. Nobody is there. Yet the air quivers with presence, like actors and singers invisible to the eye, but stubbornly insistent in the space. Scripts hover mid-air rustling, as if fingers are flipping pages. One script bumps your shoulder before floating away like a startled bird. You walk slowly. The floor beneath you is mosaic broken bits of porcelain opera masks arranged into a spiral. It clicks faintly under your steps, and in response, a section of the wall recites a verse of Hungarian poetry. You don't understand the words, but you feel what they mean, something about quiet applause, a curtain call performed only for shadows. At the far end of the room stands a marble lectern. Carved onto it is a message, etched in a looping, uncertain hand. Repeat after me. Not all echoes are answers, but all answers remember being echoes. You repeat it aloud. The voices hush. You wait. And slowly, one note swells, not music, not speech. Just a single, sustained tone somewhere between a hum and a sigh. You realize it's the room exhaling, satisfied. A hidden door swings open behind the lectern. Through it, the spiral staircase resumes, but now it moves upward for a moment before curving downward again, as if testing your balance. You step onto it. Everything narrows. The walls pull in, not uncomfortably, but with intention, like a cloak wrapping around you. The air feels sharper, as if sliced into clean ribbons of scent and sound, old wood, warm wax, distant organ chords. The lights here flicker in synchrony with your footsteps, pulsing just half a beat behind. And then a single balcony ahead flickers. One book levitates slightly, its pages fluttering in anticipation. It's time to read the music that glows. The spiral draws you onward like a melody, unfinished, curling down into another of its thousand small surprises. Your boots make a soft rhythm on the stairs, one you didn't notice until now. Left step, right step, inhale, exhale. It becomes a waltz for one, and then you arrive. The next chamber spills open not with grandeur, but with quiet revelation. The ceiling rises in an arc of midnight blue, speckled with pinpricks of moving light. It's as though someone gathered the sky, folded it neatly, and glued it to the inside of a dome. Musical scores drift slowly overhead, glowing gently in gold and lavender, like pages blessed by moonlight. They float, yes float, turning themselves in midair as though looking for an attentive reader. A few circle lazily near the ceiling out of reach. Others spiral downward to inspect you, hovering just above your hands, inviting but never demanding. You get the impression they're curious and also slightly forgetful, like polite professors, always on the verge of misplacing their spectacles. You reach out to one, and it hovers, still flaring faintly at the edges. The notes on the page glow a little brighter. You can almost hear the music not through your ears exactly, but through your fingertips, which seem to hum ever so slightly as you trace the ink. Then it plays. The sound doesn't come from around you. It rises through you. Your shoes vibrate faintly. Your knees feel the soft beat of a timpani warming up your collar, catches a rush of air that smells like brass instruments, and honeycomb. It is music felt first, then heard. The score turns itself, offering the next page. Each note is animated, wiggling gently, like it's trying to impress you. You smile despite yourself. The melody that follows is oddly familiar, as though someone once whistled it beside you on a train you never took. Some pages are more visual than musical. One glows softly and displays a moving drawing a piano strolling along a beach. Under a full moon, its lid lifting and closing like it's breathing. Another page shows a silent film of an orchestra made entirely of birds, sparrows on violin, owls on bass, a puffed-up dove conducting with a feathered baton. As you laugh softly, the room reacts. A new score flutters toward you, apparently delighted by your amusement. This one is smaller, the size of a postcard, with delicate gold ink dancing across its surface. As it nears your face, the notes ripple and rearrange, forming what seems to be your name, but not quite. It's your name if it had been composed by a poet dreaming of bells. The page tilts in midair and brushes against your shoulder like a cat winding around your ankles. You realize it's waiting for permission. You nod. The paper taps gently against your chest and dissolves into a warm shimmer that seems to tuck itself behind your ribs. A quiet chord rings inside you, content, simple, final. You've just been given a song, one written for you and no one else. Looking up, you now see that each person who's ever passed through here must have received one too. The upper dome is filled with faint glows like fireflies, caught inside glass each, a memory of someone else's song. They drift lazily, glowing with quiet pride. And then you see him. At the far edge of the chamber sits a man hunched over a glowing lectern, scribbling furiously with a mechanical pen. He wears a long scarf and a crumpled tuxedo, and his hair looks like it's had too many ideas and not enough sleep. He doesn't look up. The pen clicks, writes, clicks again, writes more. You walk closer. On his pages are measures of music that curve strangely, sometimes backward, sometimes upward, into the margins. Some notes are shaped like stars. Others are footnotes in Hungarian crossed out and rewritten in Latin, then scribbled over again with simple words. Too noisy. Try flutes. Make it smell like toast. You clear your throat. Nothing. You say, "Excuse me." Still nothing. The man's hand trembles for a second, and then he finally lifts his head. His eyes are luminous, but not quite focused on this plane of reality. "You're late," he says gently. "But that's all right. This part was supposed to happen after the second intermission." You blink. He gestures toward the dome. They only come when someone listens long enough, when the silence gets loud. That's when it writes itself. You glance at the pen. "Is it yours?" you ask. The man chuckles. "Oh no, I just hold it when it needs a break." You look at the pages. The music is still writing itself, measures appearing even as you watch. The pen jerks left right down, dotting the page with flourishes and footnotes. And then it pauses, floats above the parchment, and spins slowly, as if unsure what to do next. The man looks at you with an expression somewhere between curiosity and déjà vu. Would you like to try? He holds out the pen. It's heavier than expected. The weight of unfinished things. The moment you grasp it, the music stills. A page curls upward, fresh and blank. You don't know what you're doing, but your hand moves anyway. Not writing, but drawing shapes that feel like memory. The outline of a spiral, a teacup, a curtain lifting by itself. The pen glows slightly, and a note appears on the page, a single luminous dot surrounded by silence. The man nods. It'll do. That note is yours now. You hand back the pen, and he tucks it behind his ear, already fading into the background again. You turn to leave. But as you do, one final page floats down to your feet. On it, written in soft gold ink, are 5 words. Follow the next glowing stair, and behind you, as if on cue, one step on the spiral begins to shine. The glowing stair feels warm under your boot, almost like it's been waiting there for a long time, just for you. The glow isn't blinding. It's the same kind of gentle radiance you get from old lamps in childhood bedrooms or candles left too long in windows. You step onto it, and it gives a polite creak of acknowledgement. As you descend again, the dome of floating manuscripts slowly disappears above, dimming like stars retreating before sunrise. The spiral continues, but the atmosphere changes. The air becomes sweeter, tinged with something herbal. You catch a whiff of lemon balm, sage, perhaps even a hint of rosemary. And beneath it, something more elusive, the faint scent of memory. Not yours specifically, just memory in general. The staircase opens up into a peculiar room, round, of course, like everything here. But this one hums faintly, as if trying to harmonize with your thoughts. The walls are lined with rows upon rows of narrow drawers, each the size of a pencil box, stretching up far above your head like the inside of a clockmaker's filing cabinet. And the drawers are alive. They rustle, shift. Occasionally, one pops open to look around and then shuts again with a contented click. Some flutter as you pass like birds startled into half-flight. A few emit whispers that sound almost but not quite like your name. Floating in the center of the room is a massive card catalog. Except this one isn't bound by gravity or reason. It's a stack of cards the size of a dining table, suspended mid-air and slowly spinning. The cards don't fall. They hover in neat spirals, occasionally shuffling themselves with soft, rustling flutters, like pages of a book turned by wind rather than hands. You reach out and pluck a card. It's soft, more like pressed cloth than paper. The text on it is hand-stitched, tiny golden thread. Things I almost said to someone on a Tuesday but thought better of. You smile. Another card floats past your nose, insistent. Why you always forget that dream with the accordion and the owl. You grab that one too as you hold the cards. They vibrate softly, then grow lighter, then vanish. Not disintegrate, just rehome themselves. Somewhere behind your sternum, you suspect. A small bell rings near your shoulder. You turn, and there it is. The librarian's assistant. Or perhaps just the library's own way of welcoming you. It resembles a cricket, but slightly taller, wearing a tiny green apron with embroidered pockets full of fountain pens. Its antennae twitch politely. Pardon, it chirps, but the index would like a word. Before you can ask what that means, the central catalogue begins to stir with greater urgency. The stack separates into smaller spirals, and one descends like an elegant staircase made of flashcards. The cricket gestures to the path. With nothing to lose, you climb aboard. Each step is soft and word-covered. You find yourself moving upward now just slightly, as if climbing memory itself. The cards beneath your feet shimmer faintly as you step. Quotes, sketches, riddles, half-finished lullabies. At the top of the spiral is a little desk, quite ordinary compared to the rest of the room. Polished wood, a tiny reading lamp, and a mug filled with ink instead of tea. A single card waits in the center, face down. You turn it over. On the front, would you like to remember or be remembered? And below that, in much smaller text, you may only pick one, but we won't tell anyone which. You think about it. The room waits. You place the card back face down. The desk emits a warm sigh, as if satisfied that you didn't need to answer aloud. Around you, the card catalogue begins to ascend again, drifting back into the spiral it came from. Satisfied for now, the cricket chirps once and hands you a folded paper origami style shaped like a hummingbird. It flutters in your palm, then unfolds itself mid-air and becomes a glowing arrow pointing toward the next exit, a narrow arch you hadn't noticed before, low and crescent-shaped like the mouth of a violin. As you approach the archway, the drawers lining the wall begin to still. A few click shut gently, as if tucking themselves in for the night. The final drawer near the door opens just enough to release a tiny gust of cinnamon-scented air. A card peeks out, addressed to no one in particular. You glance at it. The next step is backwards. And indeed, as you step through the arch, you realize you are walking down the spiral again. But this time, everything around you is gently uncoiling. The stairs don't descend. They relax. They stretch. The air softens. The lights begin to dim, but not out of exhaustion, more like they're switching to candle mode. You notice that your coat feels lighter, your mind too. as though you've just organized a shelf in your head that you'd forgotten existed. And up ahead, the spiral turns sharply, but this time not forward. It loops back, backward. The backward spiral turns are gentler, less like steps, more like suggestions. Each curve nudges you along as if the library is now exhaling in slow motion, still descending technically, but it doesn't feel like it anymore. The walls expand. The air grows richer, dusted with the scent of pencil shavings, wool, and something faintly like rosewater-soaked toast. You enter what seems to be a reading room, but it's unlike any reading room you've seen. The space has no ceiling, only a sky painted with a swirling fresco of dreamscapes clocks, melting into violins, cities, floating on tea saucers, a moon wearing opera glasses. The walls are bookshelves that tilt slightly inward like tall gentlemen leaning in to share secrets. In the center of the room are chairs, dozens of them, all mismatched velvet armchairs, wicker rocking chairs, a velvet chaise that looks like it's always mid-sigh. Even a bathtub, repurposed with cushions and a tasseled canopy. Some chairs are already occupied, though not in any way that requires alarm. You see outlines of readers made of smoke or wind or memory. One is folded neatly into a corner with a stack of almanacs. Another floats 2 inches above a chair, reading a sheet of music that glows with shifting notes. None acknowledge you, but none seem bothered by your presence. This is not a place of disturbance, only of drifting. A small table waits near the center, laid with a silver teapot and a selection of glasses, some tall, some short one, that looks suspiciously like an hourglass turned sideways. A little sign rests beside it. For those between thoughts, you pour yourself a small glass, unsure what to expect. The liquid is colorless, but thick like honey, stirred into fog. You sip. It tastes like the moment just before a brilliant idea, quiet, a little tingly, maybe lemony, and then it's gone. You feel smarter, or at least taller. From across the room, a ladder slides down a shelf all on its own. It stops right next to a book, enormous, bound in faded indigo linen, with a title that doesn't quite stay still. When you squint, it reads Index of Misplaced Endings. As you reach for it, the ladder leans helpfully. The book is surprisingly light. When you open it, the pages flutter like a pigeon shaking off sleep and settle on an entry labeled simply, You Tonight. You pause. The paragraph below is vague and poetic, walked backward into wonder. Remembered how silence carries. Accepted tea from a question. Chose not to finish. Listened anyway. That's it. No moral, no twist ending, just an observation. When you close the book, the shelf it came from politely closes itself like a fan. You sit in one of the chairs. It feels like it remembers someone else you once were. Not in a haunting way, more like a reunion with an old coat that still has your laugh in its pockets. From your spot, you watch the fresco sky rotate slowly above. You try to follow one detail, a tiny ship caught in a whirlpool of musical notes, but the longer you look, the more it slips away, replaced by other images. A cello curled into a croissant, a fish whispering into a fountain pen, a librarian made entirely of ribbon glides by pushing a cart of books bound in weather patterns. Tornadoes of 1884, the warmest breeze that ever apologized. Fog that made a prom proposal in Oslo. She nods once at you, as if recognizing your page number, and continues on her looping route. You don't know how long you sit there, but time stops being useful. Eventually, you rise and continue down the spiral which has grown faintly golden at the edges. It's no longer clear whether you're in the library or just dreaming of it, or whether you've slipped into one of the books and this chapter happens to be about you. The air shifts again. A soft pressure on your right shoulder makes you turn. It's a folded note, perfectly square, sealed with wax in the shape of an open eye. You break it open. Inside, handwritten in a script that looks both ancient and flirtatiously modern, you're about to pass the memory of someone else's best dream. Don't wake it. You nod, not even questioning how paper can know what's ahead. The spiral takes one more slow turn, and sure enough, the next chamber is very different. The air here is heavy with nostalgia. Not your nostalgia, though someone else's. It smells like a cinnamon roll your grandmother might have once made, but never actually did. The sound of a piano being tuned floats faintly from nowhere. Dust motes drift like shy ghosts. You don't walk through this space. You tiptoe. On one side of the room sits a cradle gently rocking. Empty. On the other side, a pair of worn shoes. Child-sized face the wall like they've been scolded but don't mind. A small table holds a snow globe that when shaken swirls. Not snow, but glittering sheet music. You bow slightly, not out of fear, but respect. Whatever dream this is, you are only borrowing its corridor. And as you pass through, the music shifts again, distant voices harmonizing in a minor key, like a lullaby written during a thunderstorm, but never sung out loud. At the far wall, a door, painted with constellations you don't recognize. You push it open gently. The spiral staircase is waiting. The staircase, this time, is narrower, older. It creaks, not just underfoot, but in its bones, like it remembers who's walked it before and has opinions about their pacing. You slow naturally, sensing it prefers a certain rhythm, thoughtful steps evenly spaced. A kind of spiral etiquette. This part of the library smells like brass and oranges left in drawers. The walls close in slightly curved like the inside of a pocket watch. You can hear something ahead clicks, dings. The occasional dingy bell, but muffled as if filtered through velvet curtains. When the stairs finally release you, it's into a room unlike any before. It's a sorting room, but not for books, for moments. All around you are conveyor belts gently whirring along, not with packages or letters, but with delicate bubbles. Each bubble is perfectly round and faintly iridescent, like soap bubbles that haven't realized they're supposed to pop. Inside each one floats a small, vivid scene, a toast at a birthday party in Lisbon, a laugh shared between strangers in an elevator in Jakarta, a dog pausing to look at a comet in Saskatchewan. The bubbles drift along the belts like dreams waiting for assignment. Some merge, others divide neatly. When one touches another, it might absorb the smell of cinnamon or forget its language entirely. You watch, entranced, as a particularly large bubble stops before you, wobbles, then opens like a blossom. Inside it, a memory that isn't yours. A grand chandelier shattering in reverse, its shards leaping upward from a marble floor, reassembling themselves midair as an unseen orchestra tunes up in the distance. Someone gasps. Applause erupts. You feel your skin prickle because you're there briefly. You can smell the wax from the candles and hear someone whisper, "Encore," then it's gone. The bubble seals itself and hums off down the belt. A tall mechanical librarian with 8 arms, 3 holding pens, 1 carrying tea floats past. It nods. One of its arms gestures toward a small booth lit from within. Inside the booth, a ticket machine. Above it a sign, "Moments in need of readers." You press the single button. A card slides out with a pleasant ding. The font is handwritten, the corners lovingly worn. It reads, 4th row, balcony, left side 3 seats over from the woman in green gloves. You will hear your own laugh, though you won't remember laughing. You step back and the booth dissolves into steam. The staircase reappears behind a curtain of soft wires like the cords behind an old switchboard. You push through. Now, the air is different again, thicker with static and time. You emerge into a cavernous room that looks like the inside of a forgotten theater, one built only for practice, never performance. A piano sits on a rotating platform, playing itself with all the hesitant confidence of a teenager in a music exam. A violin case is open but empty. You hear its melody anyway. Along one wall, rows of gloves hang neatly stagehand gloves. You think, though none are labeled. Each pair seems to twitch faintly, as though remembering cues from long ago. A faded sign dangles above them, things that make the stage move. As you walk past the gloves, one pair detaches itself and scuttles along the floor like a crab. It opens a trapdoor near your feet, then gives a formal little wave, encouraging you onward. You climb down into a miniature orchestra pit, but there are no musicians. Instead, there are chairs filled with instruments, seated like patrons at a concert. A cello reclines like royalty. A clarinet crosses its legs. The timpani seem restless, tapping their own mallets on their thighs. One trombone appears to be asleep. You realize they're listening, and when you stop to listen to, you hear what they do. Not music exactly, but rehearsal, whispered adjustments, a soprano clearing her throat in another room, someone tuning a harp through a wall, a rhythm building beneath your feet, trying itself out on the bones of the building. And then faintly, you hear something else, a voice clear and close. You're doing well. You turn. No one. Just an open doorway at the far end of the pit. Beyond it lies a hallway made entirely of stage curtains, layers upon layers of velvet and silk, gauze and lace. You pass through reds, purples, blacks, blues. Some are beaded, others stitched with faintly glowing symbols, quavers, footprints, quotation marks, leaves. As you part the final curtain, you see it. A spiral stage, built like a staircase, coiling inward to a center no one ever reaches. Each tier of the spiral is lined with tiny balconies, some for instruments, some for puppets, some for ghosts. And at the center of it all, a single spotlight, glowing faintly like it's breathing. No audience, just you. A scroll rests at the edge of the stage. You unroll it. It reads, Scene 7. Enter the dreamer quietly. And beneath that, no lines. Just listen. You step onto the spiral stage and listen. The spiral stage beneath your feet feels soft, almost padded, as though every step you take is muffled by velvet and memory. The spotlight follows you without urgency, keeping its gentle glow centered just far enough ahead to keep you curious. Its light doesn't blind, it invites. You pause to listen as the scroll advised. At first, silence, but not empty silence. It's the kind that hums faintly behind your thoughts, full of breath and potential. Then, as your ears adjust, you begin to hear things you didn't know you were missing. A cough, very polite from somewhere behind one of the balconies. A page turning in the dark. A whisper perhaps in Hungarian, or perhaps in the language dreams use before being translated by the waking brain. The spiral stage narrows. As you walk, each turn gently sloping as if drawing you closer to something unspoken. You notice now that each tier of the spiral is decorated differently. The outermost edge was lined with instruments and ghosts, but here, closer in, you're surrounded by old props, fake trees with hollow trunks, golden moons on sticks, a well-worn bear costume missing an eye. One wooden crate is labeled Raindrops Sound, marble version. Another is full of gloves, each one labeled Left Only. You reach down and lift one of the gloves. It purrs. Not a cat-like purr, more like the sound a cloud might make when you give it a compliment. You put it down carefully. As you continue inward, you pass a dressing mirror. A tag hangs from it. Objects that remember your reflections. You hesitate, then step in front. But the mirror doesn't reflect you exactly. It shows a version of you in costume, elegant, late Victorian attire, tailored but slightly whimsical, like a detective who moonlights as a poet. You look tired, but deeply amused by something you won't explain. The image winks, then fades, replaced by fog. You step away and find yourself now surrounded by low music, not from an orchestra, but from the very walls of the spiral itself. Soft cello notes waft up from beneath your feet, mingling with flute tones and an occasional triangle chime that seems embarrassed to be heard. The closer you get to the spiral center, the warmer the air becomes. Not hot exactly, but infused like the backstage of a small theater in winter, full of costumes, still warm from their actors' makeup puffs, hanging in the air, perfume notes clinging to the velvet. And then around the final curve, you find it, the center of the spiral stage. It is not a grand podium or spotlighted throne. It's a piano, upright, modest, slightly scuffed, but it hums. Not because someone is playing it, but because it remembers being played. There's a little stool in front of it, and a folded program rests on top. You pick it up. The title reads, "A Rehearsal for Something That Never Happened." Underneath that, composed by the collective memory of everyone who's ever stood where you're standing. You sit. The keys are cool under your fingertips. One of them, middle C, vibrates faintly, as if purring in its sleep. You press it. A note rings out. Simple, clear, then something strange. From behind the spiral stage, someone claps once. Then again. Slow, thoughtful applause. You look up. Balcony, shadows lean forward. They aren't human. Not entirely. Some have outlines made of notes. Others wear stage masks that shift expressions between blinks. But they're listening. A new sheet of music unfurls across the piano's top. It's blank at first. Then notes begin to write themselves as you press keys. You're not following music. You're writing it by playing. One note becomes a phrase. A phrase becomes a verse. You don't know how you know what to play, only that it feels right. The music has no lyrics, but you swear there's a story buried in it. Maybe yours, maybe not. As the melody spills out, the spiral begins to glow. Not dramatically, just a soft pulse like the library itself is breathing in sync with the music. You don't know how long you play. Could be minutes. Could be years folded into dream time. Eventually, the music settles on a final chord. You hold it for a breath too, then release. The stage exhales, the spiral dims. You stand. A single object now sits on the stool, a paper ticket. You turn it over. One side reads, Act 2, the archive beneath the stage. And on the other, enter by forgetting something small. You pause, and then, in a quiet gesture, you can't explain, you choose to forget just one detail, a tiny one. The smell of the first library room, perhaps, or the exact way that cello note curved. You let it go. The piano hums in approval. A panel in the stage floor opens without a sound, revealing yet another downward stair, this one lit by footlights that flicker like fireflies. You descend again, and the spiral, ever patient, welcomes you back. The stairs beneath the spiral stage feel like they were built for ghosts, quiet, forgiving, and surprisingly plush. Each step gives slightly underfoot, not from age, but out of some unspoken courtesy. It's the kind of stair you could sleep on without complaint. As you descend into the archive beneath the stage, you notice that the lights grow dimmer, not from a lack of power, but from preference. The glow here is hush-toned, tinted in parchment gold and soft pewter. It's the color of things that prefer to be remembered gently. The ceiling lowers as the walls widen, and soon you're walking through what can only be described as a vault of lost beginnings. Not endings, not middles, just beginnings. The first alcove you pass has a sign carved into the stone. First sentences. Nobody finished. Inside are floating scrolls, each frozen mid-spin in mid-air. You lean in to read a few. It began the moment the river blinked. The piano had been whispering all morning, but no one. He opened the door to find her disguised as the wallpaper. You try to follow one scroll as it loops, but it shimmers and vanishes, reappearing in a different part of the alcove like it changed its mind. You smile. It's not trying to be difficult. It's just shy. The next chamber has no sign, but you know what it is the moment you step inside a room of unclaimed melodies. Strings hum as you walk past. A trumpet quietly clears its throat. A glockenspiel pings once, as if asking for attention, then goes bashful. The walls are hung with translucent sheet music pulsing faintly, as if breathing through tempo. You run your fingers along the edge of one score, and a few bars of music rise softly into the air, somewhere between a lullaby and a jazz riff in slow motion. It ends before it really begins, satisfied with its own ephemerality. A spiral podium rises from the center of the room, offering a small wooden box. You open it. Inside, a baton, carved from obsidian, still warm. You don't take it. Just acknowledge it. As you continue through the passage, the corridor narrows again and begins to feel older. Dust gathers in artistic arrangements, concentric circles. Mobius strips the outline of a rabbit wearing a monocle. Here, the archives take on a slightly more theatrical tone. You pass niches labeled cancelled entrances, monologues meant for rainstorms only, costumes that became themselves. Each doorway opens briefly as you pass, offering a glimpse into odd little rooms where no one performs, but everything watches. One chamber has a dress made entirely of clock hands. Another holds a bench that hums lullabies when no one's listening. You stop before a particularly grand doorway that reads, "The memory of the audience." inside a wide amphitheater filled with empty seats. Except they're not exactly empty. Each chair hums with the imprint of someone who once sat in it. Not just in this building, but anywhere anyone has ever waited for a performance to begin. You walk among them, brushing your hand along the velvet backs. From some, you hear rustling programs. From others, whispered gossip, gentle anticipation. One whispers, they've never forgotten that second act, and another replies, it's the intermission that matters most. At the very front is a balcony carved into the wall, a royal box for memories too big for the seats. Inside it, a single mask sits on a velvet cushion, half comedy, half tragedy, but both sides asleep. The mask flickers once, then stills. You nod to it and exit quietly, as though not to disturb a dreaming monarch. Down one final set of stairs, steeper this time, you emerge into the deepest part of the archive. It is not a room. It is a chambered theater with concentric circles carved into the stone like the inside of a seashell. The acoustics are perfect. You hear your own breath reflect back like a curious echo. At the very center sits a music stand, but not for notes, for time. A faint ticking begins the moment you step forward, not the clock, not exactly. It's the sound of remembered cues, moments when the curtain was meant to rise even if it didn't. The collective thrum of almost S. You place your hand on the stand. Nothing happens. Then everything does. One by one, the lights above flicker on, tracing the spiral of the space like fireflies joining a dance. The floor shifts slightly, and from below a slow rise of warmth like stage lights heating up even without an audience. You realize this isn't a performance space. It's a rehearsal of a memory that hasn't happened yet. And you're the only one who's arrived on time. The room doesn't ask you to do anything. It simply acknowledges you. A soft breeze stirs from nowhere. The curtains twitch in their sleep. A piano chord ripples in the far distance, unaccompanied, but not lonely. When you step away from the stand, the ticking stops. You feel rehearsed, in a good way, prepared for something you didn't know you were about to remember. At the far end of the chamber, a thin crack of light appears. Another door, another stairwell. The spiral has not stopped. Not yet. The light behind the thin door isn't urgent. It's the kind of glow that waits politely like a cat perched on a windowsill, unsure whether it's been invited or simply wandered into your dream by accident. You push open the door with both hands, and the air changes brighter, lighter, scented with dry ink and vanilla pipe smoke. The staircase beyond is different now. Broad stone steps covered in overlapping rugs, each one threadbare in a different language. One is Turkish, woven with crescent moons and coffee cups. Another appears embroidered with sheet music. A third is made entirely of old theater tickets, stitched together with golden floss. As you descend, a breeze brushes your cheek. It carries a smell You can't quite place citrus mixed with something older, like forgotten applause. You emerge into a hallway that doesn't know if it wants to be indoors or outdoors. There's a wooden floor beneath your feet, but grass grows in the cracks. The walls are painted with trees, so realistic, you swear you see their branches sway. The ceiling is glass, or at least something that behaves like it. Above, stars drift in slow spirals, twinkling in time with music you can't hear yet. At the end of the hallway, an open archway, and beyond it, an unusual room. A script library, but not of published plays or well-known librettos. These are scripts that were never performed, penned feverishly in half-sleep, or scribbled on cafe napkins in 1901 in Budapest, then tucked into coat pockets and forgotten for decades. The shelves are mismatched. Some are made of cello cases turned sideways. Others are made of old violin bows lashed together with red string. Each shelf is labeled by mood, not alphabet. 2. Hopeful, accidentally, brilliant, almost a romance, and your personal favorite, stage directions with regrets. You wander the stack slowly. One script you skim includes only character names and nothing else. Unnamed soprano, walking metaphor, clockmaker with regret. Another is entirely stage directions. Enter left pause. Forget your lines. Look at the moon instead. You find one tucked sideways between two larger volumes, marked only with a coffee ring and the words, "For the one who arrives late but stays long." You open it, blank pages, until you reach the center. There, a single sentence. You've been written into something gentler. The ink is still drying. You close the book and place it back. But before your hand leaves the spine, the entire shelf sighs, like it's been waiting years for someone to notice. You continue past the stacks and come upon a stage, but this one's miniature, like something you might find in a child's music box. It's enclosed in glass, and inside tiny paper actors move in slow choreography across a set that resembles a rooftop in winter. Their movements are subtle, a head tilt here, a scarf adjusted there, a footstep that never quite lands. A plaque beside the display reads, "Every opera house dreams of a final performance that never ends." You place your hand on the glass, and one of the paper actors looks straight at you. Or maybe not. It's hard to say. Their face is half mask, half quill mark. From above, a faint mechanical clinking begins almost like a printing press. You look up. Overhead, a contraption is carefully lowering a scroll from the ceiling. It drifts down on ribbons twirling as it descends, like it's enjoying the attention. You catch it in both hands. It reads, "Intermission has ended. Please proceed to wardrobe." You blink, and suddenly, a doorway has opened behind you. Inside a courtroom. But nothing is ordinary here. The garments hang with a kind of elegance, even in their stillness. A jacket made entirely of stage curtains. a shawl sewn from ticket stubs, a long coat whose lining is printed with hand-drawn constellations that don't match any you've ever seen. One pocket contains confetti that never falls. Another hums faintly in the key of B minor. A note sits on a stand in the middle of the room. Choose an outfit that feels like a memory you haven't had yet. You hesitate. Then your hand drifts to a deep burgundy cloak embroidered with gold thread, weighted just enough to feel like responsibility, but lined with velvet comfort. It smells of old playbills and firelight. When you drape it over your shoulders, it settles against your back like it's known your shape forever. As soon as you fasten the clasp, the mirror beside the wardrobe shimmers and parts, revealing another passage. This one isn't stairs. It's a spiral ramp, soft lit and padded with opera programs that whisper names as you step over them. Maria, Imre, Sandor, Lily, each voice speaking just once, like a cast roll call remembered in candlelight. You follow the path downward, and once again, the spiral welcomes you. The spiral ramp narrows. As you descend its edges, soft with velvet drapes that breathe ever so slightly. When you pass like curtains exhaling between acts, the programs beneath your feet still murmur names in languages you almost recognize. Some roll their R's like a tango. Others bow vowels like cellists. One name, Zofia, echoes 3 times before falling silent, as if expecting applause. You trail your fingers along the wall as you go. It's warm, almost backstage warm. You recognize that strange theatrical heat, the kind that smells faintly of hairspray, adrenaline, and antique perfume. A breeze rises from below, laced with cinnamon and ink. The ramp deposits you not in a room, but into the hollow heart of the opera house. A massive, cylindrical atrium stretches above and below, echoing faintly with music you can't place. The walls are lined with balconies, but not for audiences. These balconies each host a desk, hundreds of tiny desks. Each one is lit by a single swinging lamp and scattered with notes, feathers, musical notations, costume sketches, fragments of whispered dialogue. This is the composer's hive. Except the composers are gone. Only their thoughts remain gently vibrating on the pages, occasionally turning themselves over like restless cats. One desk writes pauses, then crumples its own paper and throws it off the balcony where it flutters downward and vanishes into light. You take the central staircase, a spiral of course, that winds through the center of the atrium, narrow as a violin's neck. As you descend, each level hums in a slightly different key. One is mournful and deep, another brimming with mischief. A third smells sharply of licorice and ink. At the 12th level, something tugs you sideways. Not physically, but like a magnetic idea. A small doorway is ajar. Light spills out. Warm flickering. Firelight. You step through and find yourself in a cozy lounge, the kind hidden behind velvet ropes and only revealed to tenured ghosts. The walls are quilted with faded opera posters. The ceiling twinkles faintly with the golden stars, painted but somehow shifting. A samovar puffs quietly on a low table. An armchair adjusts itself to your height as you approach. You sit, and a tray of sweets appears. Walnut pastries dusted with rose sugar. A small glass of something plum-colored and suspiciously calming. There's also a newspaper folded open on a side table. The headline reads, "Dress rehearsal postponed due to unexplained applause." You take a sip. The drink is warm, spicy, and slightly musical, like a baritone that's been simmering all day. Then you notice the bookshelf. Each spine is embroidered, not printed. Titles like "Libretto for a Moth Who Forgot the Moon," "Rehearsals for an Argument That Never Happened," "The Unwritten Role," "You as Dreamer." You pull that last one. The moment you do, the wall beside you opens not loudly, but with a sigh, as if the house itself is letting go of something it's been saving. Beyond the wall, a secret corridor of echoes. It's lined with thin vertical slits like fluted organ pipes. As you walk, each slit releases a voice from history rehearsal notes, misread cues, muffled arguments. The breath before a note is sung. Some laugh. One whispers, "Not yet, darling, not yet." You pass through it slowly, listening to the detritus of genius. At the end, a final slit smaller than the rest. You lean close, and from this one a voice says, "You've made it further than most." You step through. Now you're behind the grand stage, not the miniature or spiral ones from before. This is the main stage, the one audiences knew. Except now the audience is gone. The seats are empty, dusted with moonlight. But the chandeliers still glow faintly, and the stage waits not for a performance, but for recognition. You find a prop table off to the side, cluttered with oddities. A top hat full of paper cranes, a lantern with a paper flame, a deck of cards where every card is the Queen of Hearts. You pick up a card and it hums. A sheet of music lies beside it, but instead of notes, it's covered in questions. What color was the voice you followed? Where did you last leave your name? If you bow now, who will rise? As you place the card back, the curtain in front of you stirs, but you're not being asked to perform, only to see. The curtain parts, and beyond it, not an audience, but your own dream laid out in scenery. Props, music, light. Everything you've touched in this spiral journey has left a trace. Here are the gloves from the memory archive. There, the cloak from wardrobe. A glimmer of the music scroll folded into the wings. The spiral staircase itself arches like a colonnade across the painted backdrop, and in the center of it all, a quiet desk with a single ticket stub resting atop. You approach. The stub reads, Act 3, The Dream in Rehearsal. Below that, Please continue downstairs. House lights are fading. As you pocket the ticket, the stage beneath your feet tilts gently like a bow taking its final dip. And from the wings, another staircase reveals itself. Narrow, familiar, a spiral, always a spiral, always leading deeper. You take one last look at the silent stage before stepping onto the new staircase, now folding inward like a seashell that has finally remembered its spiral. The lights dim behind you, not out of loss, but like eyelids closing after a long remembered gaze. This staircase feels older than the others, not worn exactly, but gentled by centuries of quiet tread. The rail is smooth warm under your hand, the wood faintly scented with wax and violin resin. As you move deeper, the silence changes again, this time textured, layered, like the hush before a snowfall. Soon, the stairs open into a vaulted stone corridor where candlelight flickers on the walls. At first glance, the candles appear ordinary until one of them whispers. You lean in. May 17th, 1901. Second violin forgets to tune. No one notices. Everyone remembers. Each candle is a memory not yours, not entirely, but shared, stored, flickering. They murmur as you pass. Opening night. 3 dropped handkerchiefs. 1 proposal backstage. The ghost in seat F12 never claps, but always stays till curtain. The soprano wore boots under her gown. It made her brave. You pause at a candelabra shaped like a tree, and one leaf glows with your name. Not the name you speak aloud, but the quiet one dreams used to label you the listener, the arriver. You continue past the murmuring flames and into a hall of rehearsal doors. Each one is tall, theatrical, dramatic in its own peculiar way. One door is painted like a sunrise. Another is covered in old ticket stubs laminated by time. A third looks exactly like your grandmother's pantry door, though you've never told anyone what that looked like. But the door you're drawn to has no handle, just a doorknob made of polished silence. You turn it and find yourself in a room made entirely of stage cues. They float in the air lines written in invisible ink, glowing briefly before fading. Pause. Let the orchestra breathe. Cross left, think of a scent, forget your name. Raise the glass. Smile like it's your last time. You walk slowly, and each cue reacts to you. One flutters onto your shoulder like a moth. Another wraps around your wrist like a ribbon of intention. At the center of the room, a music box, old ornate with tiny golden gears. But instead of ballerinas or dancing horses, its interior is a miniature revolving stage. As you wind the key, small scenes play out silent and strange. A girl hiding under an opera seat. A tenor rehearsing with no voice. A bouquet dropped deliberately. Petals scattering like spilled secrets. Each revolution ends the same way the curtain falls, but then rises again as if the box itself refuses endings. When the music stops, the box clicks open further. Inside a folded note, you are not an audience member. You are part of the scenery remembering itself. You fold the note gently and place it in your pocket. The far wall opens. Behind it, a costume archive unlike any you've seen. Not the earlier wardrobe of memory, but something deeper. This room doesn't store garments. It stores intentions worn as fabric. Here is a cloak of hesitation. There a scarf woven from unfinished apologies. A pair of shoes made for pacing, never arriving. A shawl stitched with withheld laughter. Each item waits patiently, as if aware it might be tried on again in some future whispered version of now. At the far end, a small stage glows softly. It's only large enough for one person. You step onto it. No spotlight, no audience, just a mirror. And written on the mirror, say your line. Any line. We'll take it from there. You don't speak aloud. You don't have to. You think the line instead, something forgotten but true. And the mirror flickers. In it, you see the entire opera house, the spiral library, the ticketed desk, the piano, the shadow audience, all turning slowly, all waiting. The mirror blinks, then fades to clear, and in its place stands a staircase downward, sculpted from velvet and shadow. No handrail this time, only trust. You take the first step, it holds you. You take the next, and the spiral continues. You descend without knowing how long it will take. The velvet and shadow staircase seems content to let time curl inward, looping softly like a melody you've heard before, but only in dreams. Your footfalls don't echo anymore. They're absorbed gently like secrets into deep snow. Halfway down, the air grows cooler. Not cold, just hushed. You pass through a band of fog that smells faintly of ink cinders and orange blossom. When you emerge, the stairway ends, and you find yourself in a round room filled with clocks, except not one of them tells the correct time. Some have no hands, others have too many. A few display musical notes instead of numbers. One has moth wings instead of gears flapping slowly behind the glass. This is the chamber of misremembered hours. Each clock here is wound by a different moment. A laugh during an aria, a missed entrance that became tradition, a thunderstorm that struck just as the lead soprano whispered, "Forgive me." A mechanical bird chirps twice in the distance, and the whole room sighs in response. You pass a grandfather clock that ticks in hexameter. Another pendulum swings only when no one is looking. You pause at a clock shaped like a pocket watch with a cracked glass face. Inside, instead of cogs, there's a rotating spiral staircase, tiny and exact. The same as the one you've been walking. It winks at you. Not metaphorically, actually. You move on past a curtain of antique programs, through an archway lined with musical bars that chime when brushed. Beyond it lies a corridor of forgotten epilogues. Here shelves rise high with scrolls and scripts and curtain call notes never delivered. You pluck one scroll at random They all left the stage, but the music kept playing. No one clapped. No one needed to. Each document is stitched with endings that felt like beginnings or beginnings that never found their ending. A few are just blank, except for the words, "Try again," scribbled at the top. The next room is darker, lusher. You step into what appears to be a botanical theater. The ceiling arches like a greenhouse, though no sun shines through it, only a soft lavender glow. Vines wind across the footlights. Roses bloom in the orchestra pit. Ivy curls around the mezzanine like it's auditioning for the part of quiet triumph. And the stage, covered in moss, plush thick alive, a harpsichord, its keys, dusted with pollen, sits off to one side. A breeze lifts a few leaves into the air. One lands on your shoulder. It hums. There are no actors here, only plants that remember their lines. You sit in the front row. A fern bows politely. A fig tree begins its soliloquy not in words, but in scent and movement. Something about regret and photosynthesis. You understand in a way that bypasses language. On the seat beside you lies a program scrawled in delicate ink. Act 1, Sprout. Act 2, Wilt. Act 3, Bloom. When no one's looking, you leave the theater reluctantly. But you know more spiral waits. The next hall is long lined with windows that look out onto nothing you recognize. One shows snow falling upward. Another reveals a frozen lake where dancers rehearse under the ice. One window offers a view of an opera house that never got built, and yet you're certain you've attended performances there. At the end of this corridor, you reach the reversal room. Here, everything tilts just slightly backward. Mirrors reflect who you were 5 minutes ago. Chandeliers unlight as you approach, then spark gently once you've passed. A cello plays its own lullaby in reverse, and somehow it feels like a memory being rewound. On a pedestal in the center sits a single silver earpiece. You place it in your ear. A voice speaks not in your language, but in a tone that makes your chest ache. The words translate in your bones. The final cue is not final. The house never empties. Even ghosts keep their seats. The voice fades. You take out the earpiece. A thin curtain lifts beside the pedestal, revealing the faint shimmer of yet another spiral made this time of glass and lit from within by firefly light. The glow pulses to a rhythm, not an ending, not an encore, but something gently in between. You exhale softly and descend again. The spiral staircase of glass descends in slow, dreamlike turns. Firefly light glows beneath each step, making it feel like you're walking across memory itself. Fragile, beautiful, always glowing from underneath. There's no handrail, only trust and the soft warmth of light pulsing gently to an unseen rhythm, like the world is breathing through its sleep. As you move downward, the air begins to shimmer, not hot, but charged like the space between a violin string and the moment it's plucked. You hear nothing but your own breath and the occasional flicker of tiny wings below the glass. Eventually, the spiral unfurls into a room that doesn't quite end. It's circular, yes, but the walls seem to bend away forever, like a carousel caught mid-turn. The center holds a low platform with a velvet chaise, a single music stand, and a lamp whose flame doesn't flicker, only glows with quiet certainty. All around the space are phantom musicians. You can't see them, not exactly, but you feel their presence in the hush between notes, in the weight of paused breath, in the shadows that lean ever so slightly toward you. Instruments float gently in the air, an oboe, a harp, a flute, carved from bone-colored wood. They sway softly, waiting. You step onto the platform. The chaise sighs beneath your weight, as if recognizing you from a previous life or previous act. A breeze rustles the pages on the music stand. You glance at it. No notes, just this written in looping script. Your part is silence, but the silence must be true. You sit quietly, and around you the orchestra begins, soft, impossible, like wind learning harmony. A cello line hums gently beneath your ribs. Violins drift like steam curling from an old rooftop. Somewhere, a muted trumpet carries a question it never expects to be answered. You close your eyes. This is music that doesn't demand attention. It offers companionship. And as you listen, you begin to notice things in the room that weren't visible before. Shelves slowly fading in. They don't hold books or scores, but memories of sound. The echo of first footsteps on an opera stage. The hush before a note. The applause of a single person standing too early. You reach toward one shelf and touch a memory. Instantly, you're elsewhere, not physically, just enough to glimpse it. You see a woman adjusting her gloves backstage, whispering a line over and over to herself, not to get it right, but to make it real. You see an usher folding programs into tiny paper boats during the intermission of a rainstorm performance. You see yourself weeks ago or years from now stepping into a quiet library below a city that never truly forgot its music. And then you're back. The music has stopped. Or rather, it never needed to continue. It simply folded into itself like a bow at the end of a performance only you attended. You rise from the chaise, and before you, where no door stood before a curtain, now glows gold. You pull it aside. Beyond is the conductor's garden. It's night, but everything glows with a bluish bioluminescence. The garden is filled with plants you've never seen, roses that open and close to match your breath vines, that hum quietly, tulips that lean in when you think too loudly. In the center, a baton tree. Its branches are long and silvered, and from each one hangs a conductor's baton, each with a tag. One reads, "Used only once for a dream of fog." Another, "Rejected for being too joyful." And one more, smaller than the rest, "Yours." You take it. It feels weightless. Or rather, It feels like the weight you were meant to carry all along, just enough to keep you grounded while the music lifts you. As you turn to leave the garden, a path has appeared. It leads upward, not a staircase this time, but a slowly rising escalator made of sheet music, each step unfurling beneath your feet, playing notes that no longer need an audience. The last thing you see as the garden fades below you is a tiny opera mask resting in the grass, half covered in moss, looking up at the stars like it finally understands its role. You keep ascending, softly, quietly, into the final spiral. The escalator rises, not quickly, but thoughtfully like a stagehand, lifting the curtain with both hands and a held breath. Each step beneath you is made from overlapping sheets of music. Some are dog-eared, others are stained with tea or tears. The notes shift as you step. C minor turns wistful. A sharp becomes a lullaby. None demand perfection. All welcome presence. Above the ceiling, slowly curves into a vast domed chamber, the quietest yet. This is the final rehearsal hall. Though there are no instruments, no singers, no music waiting to be played, just stillness. So complete, it feels like velvet draped across your shoulders. The walls are made of spiral staircases, hundreds of them, reaching upward and downward, inward and outward, woven together like the ribs of a great cathedral. Some glow, some hum faintly, some hold shadows that watch kindly from their corners. In the center of the room stands a single chair, upholstered in midnight blue, its legs carved into the shapes of dancing figures, frozen mid-bow. On the chair rests a libretto, but it's closed. You approach slowly, your footsteps muffled by the silence. When you touch the libretto, it vibrates not a sound, but a knowing. The kind of feeling you get when you realize you've already been where you're going. You open the book. The pages are blank until you turn to the center. There in careful ink, this was never a performance, only a remembering. And now, the house lights dim. You close the book, and just as you do, the spiral staircases surrounding you begin to rotate not quickly, but in a grand, slow-motion dance. Each turns on its own axis, unfolding like petals of a mechanical flower, revealing behind them an endless night sky. Stars pulse in time with your breath. You're not alone here. Never were. You sense the others' ghosts, dreamers, composers of things unfinished and unwritten. They don't speak. They don't need to. Their presence wraps around you like applause that doesn't end, not because it refuses to, but because it was never just applause. It was recognition. Across the hall, a final staircase descends, not down into shadow, but into something warm, honey-colored, the light between curtain and dawn. You walk toward it slowly. The libretto remains in your hand, but lighter now. And as you step onto that final stair, it gently dissolves into light, its words floating up like notes, freed from paper like fireflies, who've waited all night to be heard. The spiral carries you one last time, not deeper, but inward, into rest. Now, let yourself linger a little in this hush. The story has folded itself around you like a well-worn coat, and the echoes of the opera house, the spirals, the songs, the silent applause are drifting quietly into the corners of your mind. You don't need to hold on to them. They know how to return when you're ready. Feel the space behind your eyes soften like curtains drawing closed after a long, beautiful performance. There's no need to rise, no need to move. Even your thoughts can begin to settle now, like dust in stage light, like petals after the final bow. Let your breath deepen slow and easy. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Again, a little longer now, a little looser in your shoulders, a little weight sinking into your chest, not heavy, just steady. And imagine yourself sitting back in that velvet chair, surrounded by spirals of stare and music, knowing that you were never merely a guest here. This story belonged to you all along. Every step, every note, every unopened door, part of the great quiet music your dreams have always been composing. You can return to it whenever you like. For now, you can let it go. Drift. Let the spiral take you gentle and slow. There's no need to turn back. The opera never ends. It only hushes. Now, rest, dreamer. Rest.